I built this team from the very beginning that way, not because I wanted to exit, but because I did not have a strong belief that I was skilled enough to do everything by myself. So I started stacking the deck, and then it dawned on me it's possible to build systems around how I show up. And so, by virtue of me showing up, there are certain systems that start taking over when I show up. So, I don't really have to do that work. And I kind of can just show up, do my thing, go to the beach if I feel like it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Own the Exit. This is Caleb here in the studio, your co-host here with Aaron. Aaron?
Hey, guys. It's Aaron here, your co-host of Own the Exit. We're excited for another episode with you today.
Yeah, and the guest that we have today for you guys, his name is Glenn Brooks Jr. Glenn is a well-established and seasoned author, a speaker, a coach. He's got over 30 years of transformative leadership experience. He's authored 7 influential books on communication and leadership and how to deliver memorable speeches and all of those different kind of things. I mean, he is a specialist in leadership development, emotional intelligence, team building, target client acquisition, and attraction. I mean, Glenn has a leadership development community that has close to 10,000 members that are accessing content from him on a regular weekly basis. He's got a background in radio and broadcast and so many different accolades I could spend sharing about Glenn, but just really humbled by the opportunity to interview Glenn Brooks Jr. Glenn, welcome to Own the Exit.
Well, guys, thank you for having me. I am honored to be on your podcast. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to share some things that add some amazing value to people.
And thank you so much again. And so this is Own the Exit. We talk, Glenn, a lot about how business owners and entrepreneurs can build their business with the end in mind, right? To build companies and businesses that don't demand their active involvement forever, right? It's like building a house where there's a door where they can come in and go out. And so the reason I was intrigued by having you on the show, to be honest with you, was because of your expertise and tremendous track record in team building and leadership development. And so I'd love for you just to share a little bit about that background with our audience, just so they can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, well, probably started back in high school for me, actually, when I joined the junior ROTC program in our high school and quickly rose to the rank of a cadet captain. As a junior in high school, I'm marching other high school students around, and I'm getting this bug that this feels kind of good because I was not that kid in my neighborhood, I promise you. But I tapped into something, guys, that really changed how I showed up. I'll never forget sitting in Colonel James T. Bagley III's office. He was the guy that oversaw the ROTC program. He had a plaque on his desk that said, "Tact is the ability to tell a man to go to hell, but have him happy he's on his way." And that statement painted an indelible picture in my mind. Like that, I graduated 40 years ago. Like, let's get that straight. Here's why I say that is because I recognize that if you could master the skill of communicating, you could actually get people to come ride with you on a journey that they would be truly excited about. Now, my journey ain't taking people to hell, but I promise you this, it is helping them experience things that they'll never forget. And then that quickly went to my time in the military and then radio. And then I spent a stint of time in ministry. And so that nonprofit world of being able to get volunteers to show up has been invaluable to me. And so over the years, we've written some books, we've sold a gang of them, but I enjoy this space. I enjoy the space of adding value to people.
So it sounds like you kind of were awakened to that idea of being a leader and developing other leaders. And did you kind of continue to refine that, I guess, from high school, then going into the military? And then I would think the nonprofit world has its own challenges as far as motivating people without, paying them a lot.
No, absolutely. No, as a matter of fact, I have mastered the ability to get people to pay me to do things. And I can get into that. So yes, how that happened really was
I need to learn that skill.
No, my business coach tells me all the time, he calls me the OG. And he says, OJ, I don't know anybody that can get people to show up and they're paying you, but they're willing to show up and do something above and beyond that. And I really
Wow.
believe that it really stemmed for me, guys, in a trajectory of personal development that I got on. And it got to the place to where I began to understand how people are made up and how I believe that fundamentally people need to be seen, they need to be felt, and they need to be heard.
Mm.
And when you can create an environment where someone feels like they're seen, they feel like, you know what, I matter. You feel me. You know that I'm here. I'm present with you and I matter. And then more importantly, in many cases, you hear me. When you can really create environments where people feel like they're heard, they will run through brick walls for you. And the reason why is because they have made a connection. A lot of leaders fail to recognize that leadership is about making a connection. I should not be pushing you or pulling you. We should be growing together. And the truth of the matter is, until think of it like a train that backs up to the caboose and it has to link in and lock in. Right? That locking in is work. It is not easy. It's arduous. But
Yeah.
once it's solid, bro, you can go anywhere you want and people will be happy to join you for the ride.
Come on. That's so good, man. And I think, being able to do that is so critical in building a company that, that you can actually come and go from in terms of active involvement, because you got to have people empowered that are linked up, not just with you. They'll show up even if you're not there because you're so linked up that the core values are really what drives everyone in the same direction. And I know, you mentioned having time in ministry. I personally am a licensed minister. I've been in ministry for 17 years. 10 of those were full-time. I was 100% in ministry, even as an entrepreneur. And so, I understand and know and can resonate with leading people who you're not paying or who you're paying very little. And I know, when you look at the greatest example of leadership in the Christian faith, it's Jesus, obviously, right? And he had a philosophy that you can see of, you've got Jesus, and then you've got the three core leaders, and then you've got the 12 disciples that are kind of the extension leadership team, and then you've got the thousands of followers that are kind of anchored to that core. When you're building a team or when you're coaching someone to build a team, I want to start by looking at the three, because those are the first ones you need in place, right? When building a team, are those core leaders. What kind of characteristics do you value the most when you're building your core leadership team, or when you're
Ooh,
coaching someone else too?
yeah, that's a great question. For me personally, it's got to be authenticity. I cannot be in the room with fake people. Can't do it. Can't do it. And the reason is because that level of vulnerability will matter for you when it matters most. See, when you get deep into the thing that you're doing, if you're working with a bunch of people who are not authentic to themselves, they'll fail the team every single time. We see it in sports on a regular basis where a guy doesn't play within his skill set. He's trying to do the most. He's trying to do something because maybe time is running out on the clock or maybe they're down. And so it's a quarterback. He doesn't scramble, but now you force him out the pocket. Instead of him throwing the ball away because he can't run, he's going to try and run. He gets his head taken off. And now we don't have you because we need that arm in the pocket. So I think that for me, it's got to be authenticity and transparency. So when I'm working with teams and I'm helping to build leaders, I really start with the inner work of them. And I begin to help them understand the value of getting in touch with who you are, what you do, why you do it, and who you do it for. That's a personal journey for me. And if you can nail that and you can show up flat footed, 10 toes down and say, no, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is why I do it. And this is who I do it for. Or we can build them. Oh, listen, we can accomplish some things together for sure.
Yeah.
That's really good for, I'm just thinking of a lot of entrepreneurs, right, that we interact with and that have small teams, maybe 10 or 20 people on a team, where it's not a giant business. It's very, very personal, where the leaders interacting with the team members. I think the old school leadership style, where the leader is like on a pedestal, right? And everyone's just kind of working for the leader,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't work, with it. I even think with like our generation too, it's just shifted,
It
and
has.
what you're saying resonates with me too, of that somehow trying to create that vulnerability, and maybe it starts with the leader just being authentic, and then from there it goes through the team. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree 1,000%. And I think that everything rises and falls on that leader. I think that it's really, really difficult for a leader to get a team to follow him or her to a place that they've never been. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when we cast vision, we've never realized the thing, but here's what I know. We know ourselves. So I have the fortitude to go along this journey with you because I've gone and I've built that somewhere. And so what I need to do is show up and being vulnerable and transparent. I need to share with you. And you talk about this leading, I call it from ivory towers, right? The reason that don't work is because you're not in touch with your team. And I think that in this day and time, if you do not literally, and there's a book I read years ago in ministry called They Smell Like Sheep. When a pastor or a church leader or a leader of any organization fails or ceases to smelling like the people that they lead, you got a disconnect. And in that particular case, it's not if, it's when that team begins to erode. So for me, I resonate with that big time because I think that you need to be out and among the people and you need to touch and feel. Jesus did it. He touched and he felt our infirmities. That's what enabled him to feel for us. The truth is that we've got to figure that out as a leader. Got to.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'm sure obviously you didn't, come out of the womb understanding this. And even as you, like,
Are
you know,
you
you were,
kidding me? Come on, brother. Absolutely, I did. I was born this way.
yeah, exactly. Right. And obviously you shared that the ROTC and that kind of thing had a big role in that development. But, who are the leaders that you would reference either in your past or even currently? Who are the leaders that kind of inspire your leadership style and have kind of helped you to learn and kind of establish these principles that you're talking about of authenticity and staying
Yeah.
in your lane and those
Yeah.
kind of things?
Well, for me, it probably would have to be John Maxwell. It would probably
Mhm.
be at the top.
Mhm.
He's a quintessential leader. But 20 some odd years ago, I had an opportunity to attend a workshop that our organization sent me to, along with four of my colleagues. And in that moment, I was able to build a relationship. It was about 30 people there. And what I didn't know is who these people were for real. These were leaders of organizations that were larger than most people will ever experience and get connected to. And I remember, because of John Maxwell's personality, his temperament, sitting in his basement of his house, because this is where the event was hosted. Part of the event was at his house. Out of all the people in that room, he said, "Hey, Glenn, come on over here and sit with me for a while." And we sat down at his desk, and you guys have to get the picture. This desk is huge. It's overlooking all of the whole basement where it is in his home. He's got a bear claw rug with the head on it, like, and the claws are like lying there. You got to watch your step. And what's crazy to me is
He's got a
that
scepter. He's holding a scepter. No,
listen,
I'm kidding.
it's
I'm
crazy.
kidding.
So
I'm
I'm
kidding.
sitting here at his desk and he pulls out his files and he begins to walk me through his process for writing books. And I never will forget him talking to me about just the idea that people will only go as far as you. In other words, when you're vulnerable with people, and he brought me into a moment that he was extremely vulnerable and sharing some stuff with me that I'll never forget. That shaped how I connected to people and how I desired to. And it worked. I mean, we have sold more books than most authors I know. And it's not because I have a major publisher, because I don't. It was because of relationships and how I have learned how to leverage the relationships that I have amassed over these last years, man. So no, he would probably be the quintessential. There are a bunch of people for a bunch of different reasons that would fill in that gap. But when it comes to pure leadership, nobody in my mind is bigger than John Maxwell. Nobody.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely read some of his books myself and done some courses. Haven't met him or anything, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Never seen
it's
the
good
bear
stuff.
claw rug, but
No.
Listen, bro, it freaked me out. Listen, I'm from South Baltimore, my friend. And where we're from, that you don't see that stuff, but on TV, I promise you. I promise you. It was a whole thing.
Glenn, do you ever feel like with the responsibility that goes with leadership, I know a lot of leaders burn out, right? Whether it's just the dynamics with the team or they're taking on too much, or I don't know. What are your thoughts on that as far as like burnout in leadership when it comes to, business owners?
It's funny. I think burnout has a lot to do with ego. I know for me it did. It's the idea of no one else can do this but me. No one else can pull this off but me. And then the idea of being so attached to the thing that you're doing, you become, for lack of better terms, you're getting high on your own supply. You've been reading your press clippings way too long that you actually believe that you are Superman, you're Superwoman, and you can do it by yourself. I have found that the place of burnout has everything to do with intersecting with my ego. And when I can get me off of the hot seat and say, wait a minute, who else can do this? Who can I delegate this to? Who can I hire? Who can I give part of my salary to? Because at this particular point, I can't afford to hire them, but I need to get this off my plate. Because if I burn up, then the organization will, because at this juncture, everything is rising and falling on me. And so even, my leadership style is literally about building. I remember working in the radio industry, looking for my replacement on a regular basis, looking for and asking people as I hire them, what's your game plan? Why do you want to come to work here? We were a really, really, really popular radio station, and people wanted to come there for a bunch of reasons. And I loved it when people said, because I want to do what you do. I want your job. And I'm like, bro, you can have it. And here's the crazy thing. I'll teach you how to do it. And I will move on. What they don't understand is that if you're doing my job, it's because you now pushed me to another place. And now I can gladly go to that other place knowing that the place I left is well taken care of.
Yeah.
That is so good. I know for a lot of, I just wanted to make another point on that. Like for small business owners, it could be a combination of ego and I don't know if it's fear or it's not wanting to relinquish control, right? Which is like you just said, where you end up being the person that everything revolves around, which is really terrible place to be, right? Like you want to delegate those things, those responsibilities out to people that might even be able to do them better, more effectively, and then continue to take that load off, right? But yeah, it's just interesting how that's like a common struggle, I think for leaders is to be able to offload that to their team.
Yeah. And just to your point, I think that a lot of leaders, the way we're built, we have been used to being pretty good at a few things.
Yeah.
And we actually begin to believe that no one else can do this. And I think that produces a level of unhealthy connection to a thing, to the point to where the thing that you're building will drive you to the point that it begins to drag you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's where that burnout happens. Where now I've built this thing, great, but now it's dragging me, and that's not healthy. And I know, I just turned 57 years old. I don't have that energy anymore. I don't have the energy to keep up. And I love building things that other people can come take part in, and we all get to win the championship together.
Yeah. So it seems like, as we're talking about team building, leadership development as a critical part of owning your exit, right? Building a business where you can limit or even eliminate your active involvement. I love what you shared about ego, and then Aaron, what you shared about fear. And I feel kind of like fear and ego are kissing cousins, right? Like they kind of come together. They're closely related
kind of do.
and highly inappropriate. And so,
highly, Caleb.
But so I mean, when you're looking at, it seems like what you're saying is step number one in building a great team is conquering your own ego.
Boy, that'll preach. That is step one. No, because if you don't do that step, all the others won't matter, because you're building something that's not on a foundation that's sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Well, in that fear, I think there's a fear of being exposed because as a leader, you're like, you don't want to, and John Maxwell says this too, in his 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I can't remember which one it was, but it was about hiding your weaknesses, right? And his joke is, I got a secret for you. They already know, right?
Right.
When you're leading a team,
They
but
already,
it's trying
the
to keep
jig's
that
up.
hidden, and yeah, exactly. But trying to hide that, or trying to appear strong, or so yeah. Just thinking of how those two, like Caleb said, kind of
Yeah.
go together, and conquering those, as a leader, so that the
Yeah.
team can thrive.
So if you're
Yeah.
when you're coaching leaders and in team building, in conquering ego and things like that, I love that law, Aaron, that you mentioned, because it's like the secret is they already know. But sometimes the problem is that the leader themselves doesn't actually know that that's their weakness. How do
Absolutely.
you shepherd, coach, teach people to actually be able to become more self-aware?
It's funny. Years ago, I read a book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
years ago, that changed the trajectory of how I thought about emotional intelligence. One of the things that I think it takes is someone who cares about you enough to tell you the flat, honest truth.
Yeah.
And I think that when they care, they do it in a way that they make sure you receive it.
Yeah.
See, Caleb, if I know you personally and I care about you, I'm not going to lie to you, nor am I going to let you run with a lie.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out a way to pull you to a side. Hey, bro, let me talk to you for a second.
Mm.
The reason this isn't working, had you thought about that it could be, let me tell you what I mean when I say it. At that particular point, you take self-awareness to another place. It's called self-management. See, because a lot of people, they hear self-awareness. Okay, I'm an angry man. Okay, my question to you is, how are we managing that? So is it just enough to know, or is it enough to manage? And then you work down through the third component of emotional intelligence, and that is social awareness. You're out in the middle of your team and you're not taking social cues. The lights are off in the building. They're no longer listening to you, bro. You've lost the lock.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so what do you do to figure that out? You move to step 4. Step 4 is now relationship management, where you're managing what you're socially been made aware of. And I think that when you fellowship in those 4 corners of the world, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, it changes the trajectory of how you show up. And now here's what becomes really cool. When it's okay for you to share because people get it and they're able to say, now that I know that, this is how I will position myself to come alongside. I'm not talking about oversharing. I'm not talking about bleeding and on people and that toxic crap. I'm not talking about that. But I'm saying very strategically saying, I get it. Here's what we're going to do next. And here's why I did it. And then we go from there.
I've heard Craig Groeschel say, that people will admire you for your strengths, but they'll connect with you because of your weaknesses.
1,000%.
And it seems like
1,000%.
owning your, like, having that self-awareness and that self-management of the weakness, but then when you're relating to your team, it's being honest, transparent, communicative about that weakness on a regular, consistent basis that actually strengthens the relationship and builds that trust.
All facts. My team is comprised of people who offset me on a regular basis by nature.
Yeah.
It's who they are.
Mm-hmm.
The teams that are around me, my closest inner circle, none of them are like me in that respect. We all share the same values, but we show up very differently. And I've stacked the deck on purpose so that I could win. I don't need people to show up who are just like me because we won't get it. I'm the guy you can't threaten me with a good time. I promise you. I'm focused right now because I've trained myself to be, but I promise you, as soon as this call is over, this conversation never happened. I'm moved on. But I have people on my team that can help remind me, your next step is, well, you said you'd follow up with this. And what do you want to do about this? Well, I put them in place because they love living in the weeds. I can't stand it. Don't put me in the weeds. No, don't put me in the weeds.
Come on. That's good.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And it just kind of speaks of like staying in our lane, and that's something we talk about on the exit is trying to, identify strengths, weaknesses. I know with people we've tried to hire, like we ask them, like, we need to know your weaknesses and we need to know what you hate doing, what, like, even people we have right now, it's like, don't worry, you're not going to get fired. We're
That's
just
so
trying
good,
to
Aaron.
get you set up in the right spot so that when you're working, it's not that it's going to be easy all the time, as there's
Yeah.
work involved, but you feel like you're connected with your gift mix, like you said, naturally. That's who
Yeah.
they are. Like, I don't want to put someone who isn't a certain way into a role that's just not suited.
Yeah.
When I always say it's like me doing bookkeeping, it's just a bad combo. And no
Well,
matter how many courses I take, I'm not going to be a very good bookkeeper.
Yeah.
listen, Aaron, my wife will tell you, and we will tell you, my wife is the CFO of our company and our household. If you want to be homeless, let me run the books. It ain't that we don't
That's
have it.
good.
My brain just doesn't work as to, well, who should get it, when, don't ask me to do any of that. No, I totally resonate with that, my friend.
Yeah.
That's good. So we're kind of, man, I love chatting with you. This has been a really insightful and inspiring conversation.
Yeah.
We're kind of at that time in the episode where we're going to jump into the exit round. Glenn, this is
Sure.
the same 5 questions we ask every single person that comes on the show, right? And the first question, and we're an entrepreneurship podcast, right? We want to be trendy. We want to do what entrepreneurship podcasts do. And so everybody asks this question. We're trying to be cool by asking you, what is your all-time favorite business book? And I'm going to put a caveat in there. It can't be one of yours, but then I want you to tell us what your book is on team building. So let's do that.
Well, quickly, what's become my all-time favorite, it's changed over the years. It would be You Need a Who, Not a How by Dan Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
You need a who, not a how. I live in the world where I believe that I can't get to any place of significance by myself. I believe we all need some help. And I have been modeling that principle for years. He gave me language for it, changed my mind, changed my whole world.
That's so good. So then if someone's building a team, obviously that is super significant. What's the books that you've written on team building?
Well, the one that I can just go to is my most recent book, is how I built a business from scratch, how I built a profitable business from scratch. One of the things that people don't understand is that just because you start from scratch doesn't mean you start from zero.
Right.
And a lot of people, my bakers will understand, scratch doesn't mean that you don't use something in order to get started. And that team building book really, it deals with a couple of other things, but it really talks about how to build and form strategic partnerships and build teams so that you can show up and be successful.
Yeah. And so we're going to drop in our show notes a link to where you can access that book from Glenn.
Okay.
So
That's
Aaron,
great.
ask the next question.
Next question. We ask this to everybody because we this is a podcast about passive income and owning the exit. So what percentage of your income would you say is passive income versus active, where you have to go out daily and continue earning it?
Probably 80% of it is passive, 20% is active. I live a lifestyle that makes a lot of entrepreneurs mad. Recently we took a 6-week hiatus and a sabbatical of showing up for our business, and we moved from the US to Panama.
Okay.
And in that 6 weeks, we didn't touch anything in our business, and we still made money. We still grew the company, and we did what needs to be done. Yeah, I probably, it makes people angry how little I actually physically have to show up.
Wow.
That doesn't make me angry. That makes me kind of, excited almost.
Excites me.
That is possible too.
Inspires me.
Everything we're talking about on the show, because that to me, that's like the testament of having that team.
Yeah. Well, guys, real quick, I built this team from the very beginning that way. And it's not because I wanted to exit, but because I did not have a strong belief that I was skilled enough to do everything by myself. So I started stacking the deck, and then it dawned on me, and this is to my wife's testament, that it's possible to build systems around how I show up. And so by virtue of me showing up, there are certain systems that start taking over when I show up. So I don't really have to do that work, and I kind of can just show up, do my thing, go to the beach if I feel like.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
So it seems like obviously you're living that best life right now, but what would you say, is there anything, what's one thing that you wish that you could do more of, but your business actually does kind of hold you back from?
Ooh.
Is there anything?
That's a good question. There's a bunch of things I want to do more of, but I wouldn't say it was because my business is holding me back. It's because my mindset has held me back. One of the reasons we moved here is because I want to get outdoors more, and I want to go and I want to get licensed to scuba dive and some other things.
Oh, cool.
And what's holding me back is my physicality. I have not taken care of my body over the years, grinding and doing all the things. And now it's starting to tell me that and fail me. So part of the reasons we moved here was so that we could get outside more often, eat much more organically than we ever did. And I'm on a mission, man, to change that narrative so that I can go do some of the physical things that I want to do. But my business isn't holding me back from doing that. It's my mindset because I don't want to. I didn't want to. It's just more convenient to eat what I want.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that. Number 4, if you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self, just getting started? What advice would you give? Business, leadership, what would you tell your previous self?
Hands down, stop caring about what people think because it don't matter.
Wow.
It don't matter. I grew up a people pleaser. I please people in order to feel good about myself.
Yeah.
And what I found out later in my adulthood is that doesn't work. It's not sustainable. And quite frankly, it just doesn't matter because people are going to think what they're going to think. You just need to stay true to who you are and handle your business.
No, that's so good. I feel like we could have a whole episode talking about that, but we're going to go, we're going to go to the last question. And you've kind of answered this honestly with team building, different things like that, but I'd love for you to give 1 or 2 more strategic tips. What is your strategy for creating time freedom and financial freedom for yourself and for your family?
One, which is at the top of my list, is time blocking and protecting it fiercely. I live and die by my schedule. And it's funny because although that sounds rigid, those kinds of boundaries have given me freedom beyond my wildest imagination. So I have certain blocks of time that I have allotted to do certain things. And the other times I get to do what I want because I've blocked it that way. Another quick tip is as soon as I master something, move on to the next thing. A lot of people are busy trying to do and master all the things. I believe, and this is another great book for your audience, The One Thing, written by Gary Keller, causes me to think this focusing question every day. What is the one thing? Such by doing that, it makes everything either easier or unnecessary. I have lived by that principle for the last 7.5 years, and it's caused me to become laser focused in ways that, quite frankly, as a kid, I should have been the poster child for ADD. They tell me you had to go to the hospital to get the H. And so therefore, now they're calling it ADHD. But the truth of the matter is, bro, I could not focus if you paid me. So that's what I would say. The tips that I would give is my time blocking is crazy. My own mother has to get on my calendar and she understands. And I know people, listen, for a person that had no boundaries and was a people pleaser, I thought I'd never get here, but they all get it because it's the way I live.
Right. No, that's so good, man. That's a really helpful strategy. It's something that I do in terms of business, but I'm even thinking just with what you're saying of even like putting that into my personal life, to kind of help with that work-life balance as well. It's really good. So yeah, thank you, man, so much for jumping on.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we're streaming right in from Panama City, Panama.
Let's
man,
go.
that's awesome.
We should have came down there and done this in person.
Oh man, this would have been in person.
Come on down. Come on down.
Let's come on. So, Glenn, you've got a conference, an event in Atlanta that's coming up called Bootstrapping Redefined. As we kind of wrap up this episode, why don't you give us 30 seconds on that for our listeners, anyone in the Atlanta area that wants to fly in for that event? What's that event all about, and how can people get more information?
Bootstrapping Redefined is my way of showing the world what it looks like to get and to enter rooms and spaces with leaders who have built extraordinary teams and they've not used a lot of resources to do it. When you're bootstrapping, typically you don't have it. And I'm going to show you how to leverage free, how to recruit volunteers. We're going to talk to you about building teams that will help you sustain your business and grow it to places where it doesn't actually need you. And we've got several speakers that are coming in. It is a hybrid event. So even if you can't fly into Atlanta, you can definitely jump on live, and it's live. It's not replay live. It is live. And I hope that it will help.
Yeah. So where can people get more information? Is there a website?
Yep, absolutely. My name, GlennPBrooksJr.com. That's the most
Perfect.
simplest way,
Yep.
GLENNP BrooksJr.com. And you'll
Yeah.
get all the information everywhere you can find me is at Glenn P. Brooks Jr.
Yep, and we'll also drop that in the show notes for our listeners as well. Man, Glenn, again, thank you so much for joining us for On the Exit. I feel like we've, gotten a master class on team building and leadership
Yeah.
development over the last half hour or so. And so, again, thank you so much for joining, and just look forward to staying connected with you. And
Yeah.
and I'm going to be looking into bootstrapping redefined. I think,
Yeah, man.
especially if there's an online version, man.
No, there is. And
Right
Caleb
into
and
that.
Aaron, I want to say thank you. Proud of y'all for showing up and being ridiculously consistent. I can promise you that consistency is critical. A lot of people are talented, but not a lot of people can stay consistent for very long. And that's where you're going to win. So thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate you guys.
Come on. Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks so much.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Another episode here of Own the Exit. We just are so grateful for our audience of listeners. And please leave us a review. You can do that on Apple, Spotify, if you like this show, just so that other people can hear about it. And feel free to send the episodes to others as well, so that we can continue to kind of grow our listener base and hopefully bring you more exciting episodes like this one.
Absolutely. Thank you guys again for joining On the Exit.